Let's just get started here. All right, well, thank you all for joining me today. I greatly appreciate it. This is an awesome tool that Patterson colleagues have kind of created, and also thank you for giving me a reason to fix my hair today. I haven't had many reasons to do that over the last month or so, and I'm kind of going through like a midlife hair crisis right now. I don't know what I'm doing with it. We'll see. It's to be determined, but this is the longest it's been, I think, ever in my life outside of when I was a little kid and my parents had me with a bowl cut. But yeah, so it's been quite interesting. Let me share my screen here. Okay. Hope you guys can see all that. All right, so I'm just going to get started. There's a picture of me with my hair the only other time that it was probably longer than what it is right now. I don't know exactly how old I was there, but nonetheless, it's quite long now. It's not something I'm used to. But all right, moving into this document, I want to preface it by saying I don't have all the answers or the perfect information, but this toolkit should hopefully give you some sort of guidance or ideas on kind of how you can shape your grand reopening. And I like using that verbiage at this point because it's been an interesting time. Obviously, nothing like any of us have ever had to deal with before. But going into the next 90 days, it's almost like all of us are going to have a grand reopening moment. So again, my whole goal with the toolkit is that all of you guys are able to glance over the document, and then maybe we go over what you found most important or valuable. And ideally, we kind of want to do this, even if it's just a one-on-one session, but I think including your team during this whole process might be incredibly important, because team perception at this time is almost as important as patient perception. And I think including your team in whatever your grand reopening plans are, that it's going to be key to having a successful rest of 2020. All right, so who's ready to get back to work? I saw this picture circulating on social media, and I think it does a pretty good depiction of what a lot of us are feeling anxiety-wise. Like, I look at this picture and it's just high anxiety because so many questions are to be remained of kind of what our dental offices are going to look like moving forward in the future. Obviously, this is an extreme depiction, and that's kind of why it makes me laugh here. But again, pretty funny. All right, so the toolkit, it's broken up into 4 different sections. The first section goes over financials, employment, lease. Second section is infection control. Third section is marketing and patient communication. Fourth section is how we're going to organize and mobilize to physically reopen. The majority of you have likely already completed the first 3 items here. So the only thing I'll add to this is I've heard of some successful funding for those who've been working with smaller banks and those who've also been incredibly proactive. Now, I know if you're with a bigger bank, it's a little more difficult to be proactive just because they put you in a digital queue. But again, just wanted to throw that in there. I have heard of successful fundings with individuals working with smaller banks and who've been really proactive. What I want to highlight here is your lease situation. This may be something that no one has kind of dove into. Obviously your lease is typically your second largest component of overhead. So if you don't already have a plan in place for this, it's advisable that you create one. Simply going to your landlord and asking for deferred rent may not be the most sound advice. I'd highly recommend having a professional kind of evaluate your lease, and that way you have a full understanding of it and what your options are. Patterson has partnered up with Car Realty, and they've done a pretty good job for Patterson clients of just helping them understand what all their options are. And if they're in a situation where they're able to negotiate their lease, then Car Realty kind of helps with that. The Clarity on Financial Programs document, it's a pretty good read, and it helps answer some of the questions that you still may have about the CARES Act. And again, all of these documents that I'm showing you here, all these snippets, they're within the full toolkit. And I'll make sure to send out the full toolkit to all of the registrants or attendees today. So the next section of the toolkit is on infection control. The pyramid diagram on the right is the CDC's hierarchy of controls. You know, part of your infection control policy and the vision for your practice can include focusing on these 6 key areas. You want to start to think about how you'll tackle each level of the pyramid under our new COVID reality. And some questions you could ask yourself maybe, you know, who will be in charge of what resources will be provided to your staff? Do you need external help to meet OSHA guidelines? What new PPE protocols will you implement? What new equipment will you use to create additional layers of safety? How will you screen employees and patients? How can you improve sterilization and disinfecting protocols in your office? If you haven't done so already, I think it's incredibly important that you devise a COVID-19 screening policy, one that you'll execute in the office to help keep you and your team safe. Also, aside from what the protocols will actually be, you know, I'd recommend devising a plan on how you intend to roll it out to your team and your patients. Other new policies and plans you create for your office should also include the infection control guidelines, including your current updates. I'm going to go back to the other slide for a second. You know, if your office is going to have any additional measures that go above and beyond what the baseline protocols are, you'll want to make sure everyone knows about them. I'll also make sure that to add here that you want to know the kill times of your surface disinfectants being used in the office. You know, many overlook this, and it's definitely something moving forward that has to be revisited. Understanding the rules for N95 masks is critically important. I know everyone wants N95 masks, but most people don't even understand what it looks like to properly implement an N95 mask program, and also what your responsibilities are in that as business owners. You know, this goes without saying, but it's important to point out again, you need to train and communicate to the team any new infection control measures that are put in place. They need to know what the role is, and obviously this is going to serve to really reassure them about their safety in the work environment. You know, I'm sure you guys are hearing it same as I am, that there's some team members that are scared to come back to work. So this is very, very important for a number of perspectives. The CDC also just sent out an update to the dental settings specifically, or dental environment specifically. It was on April 27th, and I'll make sure to include this document in the email I send you guys post-webinar. You know, last step within this section is to point out, or to re-point out, that communicating the new safety and infection control protocols to patients. You know, we must also remember that patients are going to be scared to come back to the dentist too, or at least some of them. So we must all do what we can to comfort them, as it may take a little more effort in the next few months to get patients comfortable enough to come back. Moving on to the marketing and patient communication section of the toolkit. Whatever communication platform you have, I hope you guys are putting it to use. If you're not, definitely be putting it to use. Whether it's Solution Reach, Revenue Well, even just an email list or updates on your website, or physically sending out letters, whatever it is that you're doing, I think it's imperative for you guys to keep your connection with your patients. You know, what I think that looks like, if you haven't done so already, is what I'm calling now communication. You know, now communication is going to let your patients know what your current status is. It may be a good idea to send status updates if you've already sent out initial communications, but you know, some questions patients may have is how you're going to be taking care of them. How will you take care of them in an emergency situation? What is your current process? You just want to make sure that they understand the office is there for them and that they understand how they can work with you right now under these new circumstances. A really powerful opportunity for patient communication is to let your patients know your updated infection control policies and what they're going to be now and the extra steps you guys are taking to make sure they're protected. It just reiterates how committed your practice is to their well-being. Another part to the marketing areas of focus is, given the economic impact that this has had on many patients, I think it's also important to discuss what resources the dental practice has to make dentistry affordable. Patients' benefits and their ability to pay for treatment are going to be changing if they haven't changed already. So whether it's an in-house financing program you already have or an in-house membership program like LumiTrack, you guys really need to think about a strategy surrounding the communication and ability to make patient care affordable. And actually, another thing that's good to do right now is to remind patients about home hygiene care best practices. No one's been coming in for routine visits or cleaning, so I think it'd be a really nice touch to receive a good educational piece on home hygiene care and maybe even how a healthy mouth helps the whole entire immune system and overall health of the body. Just a good reminder. Moving on to the next section, organize and mobilize. It's the last section in the toolkit. And basically, now is a great time to do a practice analysis. That way you know what your opportunities are and what your baselines are. So that way when you come back, we have something that we can measure. You want to also use this time to do a total office cleanup in an organization, both digitally and physically. So I would go through your practice management software to clean it up. Make sure all your SDS books are up to date. Clean out your supplies, get rid of any expired product, reset operatories. There's so many opportunities to get the facility in tip-top shape. And, I think that also includes some equipment protocols too, which leads me into my next slide here, which is this document was created by Patterson, and it's an awesome reopening protocol document. And again, you can reference this. It's within the toolkit. One thought here is it may be a good idea to have a Patterson tech come into your office 2 weeks prior to your expected grand reopening date. And that way they could just kind of check everything, make sure everything's in tip-top shape. If any parts are needed to be ordered, it should provide enough time to get them ordered and installed prior to your opening date. Last thing we want is for obviously being shut down for a month or however long, and then here you are trying to get back to work and your capital equipment is causing issues. So we want to avoid that at all costs. We need everything to be running perfectly to get to move forward with all of this. So in closing, I just want to ask, what is your 90-day plan? I feel it's imperative that all of you come up with a 90-day plan. Let's come up with it together. Or even if you already have one made, let's go over it together. I think it's imperative that while we have this downtime, that we collaborate together to make sure you reach whatever milestones you want to reach within the next 90 days, but also for the rest of 2020. So, again, that was just a brief overview and broad strokes over this toolkit. The toolkit's over 100 pages long. I will send it out to everybody after this, and if there's any questions or concerns or anything, I'm here for you guys. So my contact information was there. I'll make sure it's on my email as well, and that's all I have. Look for my email, and it should have everything there. happy Friday. I hope you guys have a good weekend. And here's to getting back to work. All right. We'll see you guys.